The ones society calls well-adjusted are the most profoundly sick, and they've convinced you that your health is disease. Watch them at their gatherings. They chatter for hours about nothing, draw energy from the proximity of others like parasites requiring hosts, cannot bear their own thoughts for even a single hour. Society celebrates this constitutional dependency as social competence and pathologizes your opposite tendency as isolation, withdrawal, maladjustment. What magnificent inversion! The fish declares the eagle broken because it will not swim. I write to you from solitude 6,000 feet above the herd in Sils Maria, where the air is too thin for those who require the warmth of bodies to breathe. Here is what I have learned through decades of wandering alone. Your indifference to social life is not deficiency, but excess. The intelligent person does not withdraw from society because he cannot navigate it. He withdraws because he can see too clearly what it is. Every conversation that does not elevate drains. Every gathering that does not challenge suffocates. You have spent years trying to fix yourself, to become what they insist is normal. I shall show you something else. That what you thought was your wound is actually your greatest strength, and that the path upward is necessarily, magnificently, fatally solitary. I write to you from my room in Turin, where I have not spoken to another human being in 3 days, and these have been among the most productive days of my life. Let us begin by exposing the first and most pernicious lie, that your preference for solitude signals something broken in you. Society insists otherwise. From your first breath, you have been taught that gregariousness is virtue, that the healthy human naturally seeks company, that isolation indicates pathology. Your educators fretted over your solitary habits. Your parents worried when you preferred books to playmates. Even you began to suspect, perhaps, something is wrong with me. Here's what they will never tell you. The herd requires social life not from strength, but from constitutional weakness. They cannot bear their own thoughts for even an hour. They exist only in the reflection of others' eyes, have no substance when alone, dissolve into anxiety when deprived of constant validation. What society celebrates as social competence is actually dependency dressed in virtue's clothing. You, by contrast, can spend an entire day in solitary work and end it energized despite physical tiredness. 2 hours at a social gathering leaves you drained as if you had carried stones up a mountain. For years, you interpreted this as your failure proof you needed more practice, that your social muscles were weak. This is backwards. Your exhaustion is your organism refusing poison. Your body knows what social conditioning denies. This is toxic to your constitution. The inversion is complete. What they call health is weakness. What they call your sickness is superior capacity. You do not need what they need any more than an eagle needs to swim. Different natures, different necessities. The fish requires water from inability to breathe air. You require solitude from ability to breathe at altitudes where the herd suffocates. Stop apologizing. Today, notice one instance where you feel guilty about preferring solitude. Recognize that guilt as submission to a false standard. You are not failing at being human. You are succeeding at being a different, rarer kind of human altogether. But why this universal insistence that solitude is pathology? If society is wrong, why does everyone from physicians to clergy to your own family sing the same hymn? The answer reveals something disturbing about how societies maintain themselves. Your existence threatens the herd's foundational assumption that their way is the only way, that human flourishing has one template, that what works for them must work for all. When you thrive in conditions they find uninhabitable, when you demonstrate that constant social engagement is not necessary for a meaningful life, you become living proof that their values are not universal laws, but particular preferences. This is intolerable to them. So society has evolved perfect mechanisms to neutralize such threats, not through conscious conspiracy, but through the instinctive self-preservation of any organism recognizing a danger. The weapon is diagnosis. By labeling you maladjusted, antisocial, isolated, they transform your difference from a challenge into a condition requiring treatment. The exceptional becomes the pathological. The threat is contained. I watched this machinery operate in Basel. A brilliant young scholar preferred solitary study to faculty gatherings. His work was extraordinary, but his colleagues grew uncomfortable. They began expressing concern not for his well-being, but for their own discomfort with his difference. Within 2 years, convinced something was wrong with him, he had forced himself into their mold. The brilliance died. The mediocre had successfully neutralized a superior talent. Understand, when someone expresses worry about your isolation, they are rarely worried for you. They are worried about what your thriving without them implies about their need for constant company. Your independence challenges their dependency. They must declare you ill so they can remain healthy in their own estimation. This is not medical diagnosis, but political strategy. Every exceptional individual successfully labeled problematic is one less threat to the social order. Every time you accept their diagnosis and attempt to fix yourself, you participate in your own neutralization. The goal is not your flourishing, but your conformity, making you safe, predictable, unthreatening to their comfortable assumptions. Next time someone expresses concern about your limited social life, ask yourself, is this aimed at my flourishing or at reducing their discomfort with my difference? The answer will reveal the true motive behind their supposed care. Now you must understand why profound intelligence and social indifference are necessarily united not through coincidence, but through the mechanism of valuation itself. Intelligence is not merely thinking more, it is valuing differently. As your capacity for subtle perception develops, as your understanding deepens, as your ability to discern patterns sharpens, you develop increasingly refined standards for what constitutes meaningful discourse, valuable time expenditure, worthy attention. This refinement is not snobbery, it is the inevitable consequence of development. Consider a master musician who has spent decades refining his ear through studying Bach's fugues, mastering counterpoint, understanding harmonic complexity at the deepest levels. Now imagine forcing him to spend his evenings listening to children bang on pots and pans. Can you fault him for preferring silence? The sounds the children make are not evil. They are merely crude, unformed, incapable of satisfying anyone who has heard genuine music. His problem is not that he cannot hear the pot banging. His capacity is too great. His ears are so refined that what might be tolerable noise to others becomes intolerable cacophony to him. So it is with you in social situations. You do not choose to find ordinary conversation boring. You have become structurally incapable of finding satisfaction in what satisfies the mediocre. Social discourse is pitched to the lowest common denominator by mathematical necessity, the level where all participants can engage. In any group, conversation naturally falls to the level of the least sophisticated member. The larger the group, the lower the level. This is not anyone's fault. It is simple mathematics. As your intelligence rises, this lowest common denominator becomes poverty. What others find engaging discussions of weather, gossip about, acquaintances, complaints about trivial inconveniences you experience as noise. Not because you are arrogant, but because you have heard symphonies of thought that make such conversations feel like that pot banging. You seek nourishment and find only thin gruel. You come hungry and leave starved. This is why your indifference to social life is rational response, not character deficiency. Your boredom is not moral failing, but accurate perception. You are bored because it is boring to someone of your capacity. Stop trying to force yourself to enjoy what you cannot enjoy. Accept that your nature requires different food than others need, and cease apologizing for this. There is a cost to social interaction you have not consciously recognized, yet you pay it every day. I call it accommodation energy, the effort required to translate your genuine thoughts into forms acceptable to those who cannot comprehend them. to modulate your natural intensity to levels others can tolerate, to energy its pretend interest in what bores you to the edge of nausea. For the mediocre, this costs nothing. There is no gap between their authentic self and their social self. They are transparent. What you see is what there is, like a room with all walls made of glass. They genuinely find interesting what they discuss. They authentically care about the trivialities they voice. No translation is required because they are already speaking their native language. But you are a fortress with many hidden chambers. The public room you show in social situations requires constant vigilance to maintain. Every social interaction is a simultaneous translation exercise from your native language of genuine thought to the foreign language of acceptable discourse. You notice yourself about to speak, then catch yourself. Will this be acceptable? Will this create problems? Should I soften this? Each instance of this calculation is accommodation energy being spent. During my years at Basel, I perfected this art. At faculty dinners, I translated my radical ideas into palatable academic language. At social gatherings, I suppressed my contempt for conventional pieties. I became so skilled at this performance that I nearly forgot I was performing. Only when illness forced me into solitude did I realize I had not spoken my genuine thoughts aloud in months. The muscles of authentic expression had atrophied through disuse. This is the danger. Accommodation is muscle memory. The more you perform, the more automatic it becomes until you can no longer access your authentic responses even when alone. You have trained yourself into inauthenticity. The false self becomes the only self you can access. Track your energy for 1 week. Notice how much mental effort goes into moderating your true responses. You will discover that this invisible tax accumulates to enormous cost energy that could have been spent on your actual work, lost forever to the maintenance of social acceptability. The revelation is harsh. Every hour you spend accommodating is an hour stolen from your life's work. But recognition is the first step toward refusing this theft. Social life does not merely fail to nourish you, it actively contaminates you. This is the darker truth, the one you have been avoiding. Every hour spent in trivial conversation is an hour of potential insight lost forever. Every adaptation to group norms makes you less yourself. Every suppression of genuine thought to avoid social awkwardness erodes your capacity to think genuinely at all. You have been infected without noticing. You began to care about things that do not matter. You started worrying about your reputation among colleagues, whether your work would be well received, what others thought of you. These concerns are not yours. They are diseases contracted from the social environment, viruses that replicate through exposure to those already infected. I observed this in myself during my Basel decade. I found myself pursuing questions others deemed important rather than questions that actually mattered to me. I worried about position, about acceptance, about whether my colleagues approved of my work. These anxieties were not mine. They were infections from constant social exposure. The recovery was painful, like a body purging poison, but necessary. Here is how contamination operates. You spend your days surrounded by people whose primary concern is status, whose conversations circle around reputation and position, whose values center on social acceptance and comfortable conformity. Initially, you recognize these concerns as alien to your nature, but exposure is persistent. The values seep in through osmosis. Slowly, unconsciously, you begin to absorb their priorities. Your authentic concerns, the questions that genuinely matter to you, recede into the background. Their concerns advance to the foreground. And one day you wake up and barely recognize yourself. The test: write down what you currently spend mental energy worrying about. For each concern, ask honestly, is this genuinely mine, or did I adopt it to gain approval or avoid conflict? Be ruthless in your honesty. You will find much that is adopted, much that serves their comfort rather than your development. Recovery requires not merely adding solitude, but actively purging the contamination. When you catch yourself worrying about status or reputation, consciously dismiss it. This is not my concern. Replace contaminated priorities with authentic ones. This is difficult. You are fighting years of conditioning, but necessary if you are to recover your genuine self. You still harbor a secret hope. Perhaps you think with the right effort, the right techniques, the right people, you could learn to genuinely enjoy social life. Perhaps you could close the gap between your authentic self and social expectations. Perhaps you could have both authenticity and social acceptance. I must destroy this hope. It is the trap that keeps you imprisoned in perpetual attempted adaptation while your authentic self slowly dies. Successful adaptation would not mean adding social capacity while preserving your genuine nature. It would mean replacing your genuine nature with a socially acceptable substitute. You would become the mask you wear. This is not compromise, but suicide. I watched this completed in a childhood friend. He was brilliant, perhaps destined for philosophy or mathematics, but he was also ambitious for social success. He learned to adapt perfectly. He became charming, socially skilled, welcome everywhere. His colleagues praised his growth, his maturity, his development of interpersonal skills. Within 5 years, the brilliance was gone. Not dormant gone. He had trained himself so thoroughly to think acceptable thoughts that he lost the capacity for dangerous ones. The adaptation was so complete that there was nothing left to adapt. He became what he was performing. This is the fate you avoid only by refusing the attempt. The choice is binary, authenticity or social acceptance. Not both, never both. Because being authentically yourself requires conditions society finds intolerable: solitude, severity, refusal of performance, indifference to others' comfort, and social success requires performances that destroy authenticity, constant accommodation, suppression of genuine thought, submission to mediocre standards. Calculate honestly. Society offers you acceptance, reduced conflict, the comfort of belonging. In exchange, it demands you sacrifice your genuine development, spend your best energy on performance, submit your exceptional nature to common standards. Is this trade remotely worth making? When you see it clearly, years of your life spent performing for people who do not understand you, energy that could have gone to your work instead diverted to maintaining appearances, the answer becomes obvious. Stop seeking the compromise that allows both altitude and company. It does not exist. Make the choice clearly. Your work over their comfort, your development over their approval, your authentic nature over their expectations. This may mean disappointing family, losing friends, being misunderstood. Accept this as the price of remaining yourself. The alternative is slow death while society applauds your successful adaptation. The path to authentic life begins with a simple recognition. Your exhaustion after social interaction is not weakness to overcome, but wisdom to heed. For years, you have pathologized this response, interpreting it as evidence of your inadequacy. Today, you learn otherwise. You can spend 10 hours alone with your work, reading, writing, thinking, and end the day tired but fundamentally energized. 2 hours at a social gathering, and you are depleted as if you had carried stones up a mountain. Society insists this proves you need more practice, that your social muscles need exercise. This is backwards. Projection. They assume your constitution matches theirs, that what works for them will work for you if only you try harder. But you are not them. You have tried. For years, perhaps decades, you have tried. You have attended the gatherings, forced the conversations, performed the rituals of sociability, and still you end each interaction drained, wondering why it never gets easier, why you never build a tolerance others promise will come with practice. Here is why. You are attempting to build tolerance for poison. Your exhaustion is not weakness, but your organism's intelligent refusal of contamination. After evenings of forced sociability, during my Basel years, I suffered not merely boredom, but actual physical illness, worse headaches, worse stomach pains, worse insomnia. My body was rejecting what my social conditioning insisted I should accept. When I finally listened to my body instead of society's theories about what should energize me, everything changed. I stopped trying to build tolerance and started trusting my organism's responses. I withdrew from social obligations, spent my days in solitude and work, and despite my chronic health problems, I felt more alive than I had in years. Your body knows what your conditioned mind denies. That exhaustion is information, not failure. It tells you this is wrong for your constitution. Stop attempting to adapt to it. Stop trying to make yourself tolerate what depletes you. Instead, structure your life to minimize exposure to what your organism is telling you to avoid. Begin today. Notice one type of social engagement that consistently exhausts you. Instead of scheduling more of it to build tolerance, simply eliminate or reduce it. Replace that time with solitary work. Notice the difference. Your body will thank you with returned energy, clarity, and the capacity to actually do your work instead of merely recovering from social depletion. The first recognition concerned your body's responses. The second concerns your mind's activities. In social situations, you are performing constantly, exhaustingly, automatically, and you have forgotten this performance is performance. There is a gap between your authentic self and your social self so vast that bridging it requires constant effort. Watch yourself in the next social situation. You laugh at jokes that are not funny, express interest in topics that bore you, suppress thoughts that would make others uncomfortable, moderate your natural intensity, translate your genuine ideas into acceptable forms. This is performance, and it is costing you everything. The mediocre never face this crisis because for them there is no gap. They genuinely find those jokes funny. They authentically care about those trivial topics. They are not suppressing thoughts because they do not have thoughts that require suppression. They are the same inside and out, transparent, simple, unperformed. I remember the moment I recognized my own performance. At a Basel faculty dinner, I heard myself laughing genuinely, automatically laughing at a colleague's pedestrian observation. For a moment, I observed myself from outside. Who is this person laughing? It is not me. The real me finds this conversation tedious beyond measure. I've been performing so long and so automatically that I no longer recognize the performance as performance. I went through entire evenings without once being myself. This recognition was disturbing but necessary. It showed me that I had become an actor who forgot he was acting, living as a character rather than as myself. The character, collegial professor, sociable colleague, good fellow, was strangling the actor. You are that actor. In social situations, you suppress your authentic responses and deploy socially appropriate ones. You have done this so long it has become automatic. The character you play moves and speaks without conscious direction, and you have mistaken this smoothness for genuine social capacity, rather than recognizing it as the perfection of inauthenticity. The task is not to improve the performance, but to become conscious of it as performance. Then reduce it deliberately. In low-stakes situations, stop performing. Stop laughing at unfunny jokes. Stop expressing false interest. Let uncomfortable silences happen. Accept that others may find you difficult. This discomfort is not social failure. It is the recovery of authenticity after years of performance. You cannot stop all performance immediately. Sometimes it is necessary. But stop performing unconsciously in every situation. Choose deliberately where and when to perform, rather than performing by default. Begin reclaiming yourself from the character who has been living your life. The first recognition concerned exhaustion. The second, performance. The third is more damning. What others claim to gain from social life, connection, belonging, shared understanding, you do not actually gain from it. You have been told you need social life as they need it. This is a lie. Examine your social experiences honestly. Conversations circle endlessly around trivialities, weather, local news, gossip about acquaintances, complaints about minor inconveniences. These friends understand nothing of what truly moves you, what keeps you awake at night, what drives your actual work. When you attempt to discuss what matters to you, their eyes glaze over. They change the subject, or worse, offer pedestrian advice on matters they do not comprehend. The connections society promises are shallow. You maintain them through performance, showing up, saying expected things, playing your part, but there is no genuine meeting of minds, no true understanding, no actual connection. You leave these interactions as alone as you entered them, perhaps more so, because now you are reminded of how thoroughly you are not understood. During my years of academic sociability, I maintained many such friendships. We dined together, corresponded, saw each other regularly, yet I was utterly alone. Not one understood what I was attempting to accomplish. Our conversations never touched what mattered. When I finally withdrew into solitude, I lost all these connections, and I lost nothing of value. The loneliness I felt in solitude was less than the loneliness I felt surrounded by those who knew only my performance. Conduct a ruthless audit. For each person you spend significant time with, what do you actually gain? Be honest. Not what you are supposed to gain, according to social theory, but what you actually gain in reality. For most intelligent solitaries, the list is shockingly short or empty. You maintain these relationships from obligation, from guilt, from the belief that you should value them. But when you examine the ledger, honestly, time and energy invested versus value received, the accounts show only loss. This recognition is harsh. You genuinely do not need what others need. You are not a social creature who has failed to develop properly. You are a different kind of creature entirely, one for whom social immersion is not nourishment but starvation. Stop lying to yourself about what social life provides you. Accept that you may genuinely require very few connections, or none at all beyond your work. This is not failure. This is your nature, and honoring it is the only path to authentic life. You now understand that social life exhausts you, requires constant performance, and provides nothing you need. The question becomes, how do you structure your actual life accordingly? The answer lies in how you organize your hours, for how you spend your time reveals what you truly value. Structure your day around your work, not around others. Wake when your energy is highest for most. This means early morning. These peak hours are sacred. They belong to your most demanding work, writing, thinking, creating. Nothing is allowed to intrude. No visitors, no correspondence, no social obligations. The world can wait until afternoon. Since my resignation from Basel, I have lived by this principle absolutely. I wake around 6, take a modest breakfast alone, then walk for 2 or 3 hours while my thoughts arrange themselves. By 9 or 10, I return to write. These morning hours are inviolable. I answer no door, handle no letters, meet with no one. This is when I write everything that matters. By afternoon, my eyes fail and I can no longer work productively. Only then do I handle correspondence, read, take shorter walks. If someone must see me, it must be in afternoon or evening when my best energy is spent. The mornings belong to my work alone. This structure may seem ruthless to those who believe time belongs equally to all demands, but your time does not belong equally to all demands. Your work, your actual work, not the maintenance activity society confuses with work, requires your best hours. Everything else receives what remains. If nothing remains, so be it. The world managed without your social presence before you were born. It will manage without it for a few hours each morning. Identify your peak energy hours. Block them for your most demanding work. Tell others these hours are unavailable. Move all meetings, calls, social obligations to your depleted hours. If your current situation makes this impossible, recognize that your current situation is preventing serious work. Either change your situation or accept that serious work will not happen under current conditions. The structure matters more than you realize. One interrupted hour is worth less than 15 uninterrupted minutes. A day fragmented by 3 interruptions is effectively a lost day. Continuous concentration is not a luxury, but a necessity for genuine work. Protect it, absolutely. Begin tomorrow. Block your peak hours for your best work. Protect this time as you would protect your life, because this time is your life, the only part that produces what matters. Structure your hours correctly, and you preserve your energy. But there is another principle equally important: material simplicity. Every possession demands maintenance. Every relationship demands energy. Every social position demands performance. The intelligent solitary minimizes everything not essential to his work. I own almost nothing. Clothes adequate for travel in different climates. A modest collection of books, though even these I often leave behind in my wanderings, buying new copies as needed. My writing implements, remedies for my various ailments, nothing more. I live in rented rooms, eat in boarding houses, or have food brought to me, own no furniture, maintain no household. When my work requires a different climate, when the air in Nice becomes too humid, when the sun in Genoa grows too intense, I can leave within a day. This is freedom. Every object I do not own is a door I can walk through. Every commitment I do not have is energy returned to my work. Every possession eliminated is a liberation. The man who owns a house is owned by it. The man who maintains a household is enslaved by it. The man who accumulates possessions builds his own prison, comfortable perhaps, but a prison nonetheless. Society will tell you this is poverty. It is not. It is wealth of a kind society cannot recognize: the wealth of freedom, of mobility, of attention undivided by the maintenance of things. True wealth is not what you own, but what you do not need to own. Consider what you possess. How much of it serves your actual work? How much exists only because society expects it? The furniture that makes a home, the decorations that signal taste, the clothes beyond what function requires, the objects accumulated through years of believing you should want such things. Each of these possessions costs you not merely money, but attention. Every object owned is a small claim on your consciousness, a maintenance burden, a weight carried. Begin radical simplification. Go through your possessions. Ask of each, does this serve my work? If not, eliminate it. This may feel frightening. We are conditioned to accumulate, to believe that more possessions mean more security, more success, more life. The opposite is true. Fewer possessions mean more freedom, more mobility, more attention available for what matters. Move toward simplicity. Rent rather than own. Minimize rather than accumulate. Seek mobility over stability. You are not building a life that impresses others. You are building a life that allows your work. These are incompatible goals. Choose. Structure your time. Simplify your possessions, but one challenge remains: other people. They will still make demands. They will still expect your presence, your attention, your participation in their social rituals. How do you refuse them without exhausting yourself in constant conflict? The answer is boundaries clear, simple, absolutely maintained. The intelligent, solitary, maintains relationships only with those few who understand his need for distance and respect it. All others are politely but firmly refused. No elaborate excuses, no apologies, no promises of future availability. Simply, I prefer solitude from my work. I maintain correspondence with perhaps 5 or 6 people. Paul Deussen, who has made himself into a Sanskrit scholar and understands intellectual solitude. Peter Gast, who comprehends my work better than anyone. Franz Overbeck, whose theological learning and personal integrity I value. These are not friendships in the ordinary sense. We may go months without letters, years without meeting. But they are real because they make no false demands. They understand that I write when I have something to say, not because convention demands regular contact. They respect my need for distance because they share it or at least comprehend it. All other relationships I have let fall away. When people express hurt at my distance, I do not apologize or explain. Their comfort is not my responsibility. My work is my responsibility. If maintaining their comfort requires sacrificing my work, then their comfort must be sacrificed. This sounds harsh only to those who have not understood what is at stake. When someone invites you to social gatherings, be brief and definitive in your refusal. I prefer solitude for my work. When they persist, and they will persist, repeat the same statement. No elaboration. No excuses about being too busy or not feeling well, which only invite them to help you find time or recover health. Simply, I prefer solitude for my work. Eventually, they will stop asking. This is not cruelty, it is honesty that saves everyone's time. For the few relationships worth maintaining, conduct them primarily through correspondence. Letters can be written in your own time, do not require the immediate performance of conversation. Allow you to present thoughts fully formed rather than improvised. Two people who correspond twice a year but engage genuinely have more real connection than two who meet weekly but speak only of trivialities. Begin today. Identify one relationship you maintain purely from obligation. Reduce or end contact. Notice the guilt, then notice the relief as your energy returns to you. Then continue the audit. Your time and energy are finite. Every hour spent maintaining relationships that provide nothing is an hour stolen from work that matters. You have learned to structure your time, simplify your possessions, and maintain boundaries. You now live differently than the herd. But there remains a question. Why does this matter? What is the significance of living this way beyond your personal comfort? The answer connects you across time to every figure who created what endures, every philosophical advance, every artistic masterpiece, every scientific breakthrough, every cultural transformation in human history has emerged from individuals thinking alone, often for years, often in obscurity, often in poverty. Not from committees, not from collaborations, not from the communal efforts society celebrates. From solitary individuals, Greek tragedy came from individual playwrights, not from democratic assemblies. Schopenhauer worked out his philosophy in isolation, ignored by his contemporaries, teaching to empty rooms. Spinoza was excommunicated, and ground lenses alone in poverty. Even Wagner, before corruption by success and nationalism, turned him into something lesser, produced his greatest works in exile, separated from the social approval he later craved. Why must it be so? Because genuine creation requires absolute concentration, the ability to hold complex thoughts in mind for hours or days, to see patterns invisible in fragmented attention. Society is nothing but distraction. Every social engagement fractures concentration. Every relationship introduces competing concerns. Every social obligation diverts attention from the singular focus required for genuine work. But more than this, society is actively hostile to innovation because innovation threatens the comfortable assumptions on which society rests. If you remain embedded in social life, you face constant pressure to moderate your thoughts, to make acceptable what should remain dangerous, to compromise what should remain pure. Only in solitude can you think the thoughts that would make you unemployable if spoken aloud, pursue the questions society has declared closed, arrive at conclusions that challenge the foundations others need to keep stable. This is why every great creator in history was solitary, often despised by contemporaries, frequently poor, rarely celebrated during life. This is not accident or coincidence. It reveals the fundamental incompatibility of genuine creation with social success. Society rewards conformity and punishes deviation. Greatness requires deviation. Therefore, greatness and social success are incompatible. Except this: if you do genuine work, you will likely not be celebrated during your life. Your vindication, if it comes, will come after your death. Can you accept this? If not, you will compromise to gain contemporary approval, and your work will become mediocre in the process. But if you can accept it, you join every significant creator in history You walk the path they walked. You breathe the air they breathed, cold and thin and impossible for the herd. Understanding that greatness requires solitude leads to a darker recognition. Society does not produce mediocrity through incompetence or accident. It produces mediocrity functionally, as part of its operating system. Society requires conformity to coordinate action, to maintain predictability, to ensure smooth operation. The exceptional individual threatens this by his mere existence. He proves that the common standard is not inevitable, that other ways of being are possible, that one can thrive in conditions the majority finds uninhabitable. This is intolerable to social functioning. So society has evolved mechanisms to suppress the exceptional and elevate the mediocre, not through conscious conspiracy, but through the automatic self-preservation of any system. It calls gregariousness, mental health, and solitude dysfunction. It rewards those who fit comfortably into existing institutions and punishes those who do not. It makes material success dependent on social performance, ensuring that anyone who wishes to eat must first learn to smile at the right people. I watched this in the German university system. Young scholars of genuine originality were systematically filtered out not through explicit policy, but through accumulated expectations. To gain position, one must please committees. To please committees, one must avoid challenging comfortable assumptions. To avoid challenging assumptions, one must think conventionally. By the time a scholar has successfully navigated this system, any originality has been ground away. The result is perfect, competent mediocrity that reproduces the system without threatening it. This is not accident, but design, not conscious design, but evolutionary design. Universities do not exist to produce knowledge. They exist to produce professors. Corporations do not exist to innovate. They exist to reproduce corporate structure. Governments do not exist to serve truth. They exist to perpetuate governmental power. All institutions exist primarily to reproduce themselves, and they succeed by suppressing whatever threatens their reproduction. Understanding this mechanism liberates you from waiting for the system to recognize your worth. The system is designed to not recognize it. Your genuine originality threatens the system. If the system acknowledged your worth, it would have to admit its own inadequacy. This it cannot do and remain itself. Stop seeking validation from institutions designed to suppress you. Stop imagining that if you just work hard enough, the system will reward your genuine contribution. It will not. It cannot. Your recognition, if it comes, will come from outside the system or after the system's values have shifted, which means after you are gone. This is not cause for despair, but for liberation. You are freed from the exhausting attempt to gain permission from those who benefit from your neutralization. Build your work outside institutional validation. If you must support yourself through means unrelated to your work, accept this not as failure, but as reality. The system will not support what threatens it. Knowing this, you stop wasting energy seeking what will not come. We arrive at the summit. Everything previous has prepared you for this final recognition. Your choice is not about your personal life, but about whether something higher than current humanity will exist at all. Every time an intelligent person submits to social pressure and adapts himself to the herd, human possibility is diminished. Every time such a person honors his nature and extracts himself from social contamination, the future becomes possible. You are not deciding how you personally will live. You are deciding whether something higher than current humanity will emerge. If all individuals capable of transcendence choose comfort over height, choose social acceptance over authentic development, choose to adapt rather than to evolve, then the future will be nothing but the eternal return of mediocrity. The same comfortable conformity, generation after generation, with nothing new, nothing higher, nothing beyond what already exists. But if even a few choose differently, choose solitude over company, choose their work over social success, choose height despite cold and isolation and misunderstanding, then something new becomes possible. Human evolution does not happen through gradual improvement of the many, but through the emergence of exceptional individuals who demonstrate new possibilities. You may be such an individual. Your choice determines whether that possibility is realized or aborted. I write this in poverty, in failing health, in obscurity. My books sell poorly. My pension barely sustains me. I live in a rented room and own almost nothing. By society's measure, I have failed completely. Yet I know with absolute certainty that I am participating in something vastly larger than my personal circumstances. The thoughts I think alone in this room in Turin may not be understood for decades or centuries, but they will be understood eventually by those few who come after me who have the capacity to receive them. I am not living for now, but for a future I will never see. This is not sacrifice, it is the highest joy, the deepest meaning possible. I am not merely arranging my personal comfort, but potentially forging a path for those who will follow. This transforms suffering into purpose, isolation into necessity, difficulty into the highest work. You face the same choice I faced. Will you choose comfort, social acceptance, the approval of those who surround you? Or will you choose height, knowing it means isolation, misunderstanding, poverty perhaps, obscurity likely? The arguments are complete. The path is revealed. The choice is yours. But understand what you choose. If you choose comfort, you choose not merely your own stagnation, but the foreclosing of human possibility itself. One more person who could have climbed, choosing instead to remain in the valleys, to remain warm, to remain comfortable, to remain mediocre. One more potential path to something higher closed forever. If you choose height, if you choose solitude, choose your work. Choose to honor your nature despite all costs, then you join every significant creator in history. You walk the path they walked, and you keep open the possibility that something higher than current humanity will emerge. Not through your work alone, one person cannot transform a species, but you become one of the few who demonstrate that. Transformation is possible, who live as if the future mattered more than the present, who sacrifice comfort for the slim possibility of contributing to what comes next. This is not everyone's path. Most will read these words, feel a moment of recognition, perhaps even exhilaration, and then return to their comfortable lives, their social obligations, their performances. They will tell themselves they must be realistic, must maintain balance, must not be extreme, and they will die slowly, one social engagement at a time, having contributed nothing that lasts. But there will be a few who hear in these words not advice, but diagnosis, not suggestion, but revelation. These are my readers, my kin, my future. They will act. They will choose height over comfort. They will climb despite cold and isolation. And from those heights, they will see what cannot be seen from the valleys. The vast horizon, the immense possibility, the path forward. To you, whoever you are, wherever you are, the choice is before you. I have shown you the path. I cannot walk it for you, but I write this knowing that somewhere, in some future I will not see, someone will read these words and choose. And in that choice, everything becomes possible. Thus writes Nietzsche, from solitude, in poverty, in failing health, in obscurity, and in absolute certainty, that the path upward, though solitary, is the only path worth walking.